this morning we're with Rod Nelson, the CEO of Geoverse. Welcome, Rod. Thank you for being with us today, and appreciate your time. Just to start off, I understand you are sequestered on the East Coast at this point in time, not back in the Bellevue office.
Yes, thanks, Rich, and good morning. Yeah, that's true. I've been spending the last few months here in Virginia. We have a home here. Our oldest daughter is attending graduate school here, and so we have a place to stay, and just spending some time out here during the pandemic.
Yeah. So I got just for sake of background, I got an illegal haircut last weekend. We've been starting to break out of the house and go see and visit with neighbors. So I don't know if you're getting stir crazy as I am, but I've about had it with staying in the house. Anyway, thank you again for being here. So Rod, you are the CEO of Geoverse. Tell us about Geoverse, what your role is with the company, and what does Geoverse do in the private LTE sector?
Yes, Geoverse is a specialty or specialized mobile operator, and we build, own, and operate wireless assets for enterprise verticals and carriers. In short, what we do is create networks for our enterprise customers that solve two basic problems. The first is that it's a coverage enhancement. So the customers that are occupants or visitors, shoppers, guests within the building can get great service from all the tier one operators. And secondly, we create a private network that gives that enterprise a great platform for business critical applications that they need to run internally. So, what's unique about Geoverse and our offer is that with a single investment, they get this sort of 2-for-1 network capability. That's on the one hand, a private network for their enterprise, and secondly, a coverage enhancement and capacity enhancement for the tier one carriers.
Gotcha. So what's the opportunity with private LTE? And can you discuss the differences or what the opportunity is for private LTE? And is that the same thing as CBRS? And how can especially real estate owners benefit from this?
Sure, yeah, Rich. I mean, private LTE and CBRS are not entirely equal because we're building some private LTE solutions using some of our licensed spectrum assets, especially in industries like mining, oil and gas, and those types of facilities where the low band spectrum that we have as part of the company can be a real benefit in building a long-range network that's still private. But for the most part, the real, waterfall or watershed, I guess is the word, that's happened here is the CBRS spectrum. And this, for the first time, allows enterprise to deploy cellular wireless technology, in an economically feasible way. And the cellular wireless technology has a number of benefits over Wi-Fi that the two together make a great combined solution. With cellular, we've got enhanced performance, more reliability, the way that the technology is engineered. We've got more security through the use of SIM-based authentication and strong encryption protocols. And, the cellular technologies offer an enhanced mobility, the ability to hand off seamlessly from cell to cell within the building and from inside the building to outside. And so those characteristics of cellular wireless technology really augment what enterprises can do with their Wi-Fi networks. And sometimes Wi-Fi is just not good enough for really important business critical applications. Those advantages of the cellular technology can be really important.
Right. So why would a landlord of any kind, industrial, commercial, residential, why would they want to run their own private network? What are the benefits of doing something like that? And, how can landlords view this opportunity?
Yeah, so let me translate those technology benefits that I was just describing more into use cases and business benefits, right? So, and I can use a few different examples from different industry verticals that we're involved in, because it varies across those different forms of real estate that you mentioned. So if I think about some of our hospitality customers and what they're interested in doing, in one example, they want to take some of their portable payment systems off a Wi-Fi network and move it onto a cellular network, that's segregated from their house Wi-Fi that guests and everyone uses. It just creates a more secure platform for their mobile payments that they're doing within the hotel casino operation they have. That's one example. I mean, another example is being able to take video camera feeds off of the Wi-Fi network onto the private LTE to apply, computer vision algorithms and things to that can help with, occupancy sensing, identification, tracking. There are a lot of applications that are being done with computer vision today. But that's a very high bandwidth application that can really clog up the Wi-Fi network. So with CBRS, you get a fresh spectrum that is, unencumbered, that they can use for these sort of mission critical applications. And if I take the example of, multi-tenant office buildings, then you add in the benefit of, being a coverage enhancement for all of your tenants, right? And if the commercial real estate market is going to become somewhat more competitive as a result of the, pandemic and the changes that may happen, right? I mean, a given building is going to need to have very strong cellular coverage, something that people will look for in choosing one building over another. So that's a very, clear benefit coming from the what we call neutral host side, meaning that we're providing enhanced cellular service for the customers that are occupants of the building. But at the same time, that building owner has a building-wide network now that they can use for, advanced sensor networks for building management, energy management, consumption of utilities, occupancy measurements, just everything about how they can run their building more efficiently. We're engaged with one of the major developers and owners in Manhattan, around this whole basket of applications, right? They have very advanced thinking on how to utilize sensor networks and feed that data into, advanced algorithmic systems for, building management. And, with the CBRS network, they're able to add more sensors and, that's more reconfigurable. For example, in the lobbies of these major buildings now, there's probably going to need to be a changing degree of crowd control and access management, which might drive the need for more video sensing, video cameras, or thermal sensing. And, with a wireless network, you can put those up and you can change them later at a much lower cost than if you were wiring things in the old way. So this is just an example of, quite an endless stream of things that we see people wanting to do with this, with these type of private LTE networks.
And I would think in a world of ransomware and those things that security would be a huge reason to want to move to something like this, to offload from Wi-Fi network. I've seen demos given by some of the top security people about how easy it is if you're not separating your Wi-Fi from your internal, the internal Wi-Fi network and the external network. And this seems like a great way to be more secure.
Absolutely. We just announced a job site or a temporary LTE solution with, one of our key partners, CTS. And one of the applications for that are construction sites. And we've heard stories of that very thing, right? I mean, a construction project is threatened to be shut down because someone hacked their Wi-Fi network. So security is really an important aspect. Plus, in a job site environment, right, there's the reach of cellular, the fact that we can transmit farther and have a more reliable signal is really important also.
Yeah. Well, we love CTS, and those guys are, as we saw the announcement that you folks made about that arrangement. And I guess the important thing to understand is that this takes sort of a stack of companies, if you will, to put this together. So, CTS being an installer and an integration company. How does Geoverse fit into the ecosystem? What's Geoverse's part of this whole private LTE CBRS situation? How do you fit?
Right. I mean, our core competency is as a mobile operator, right? Our parent company is ATN International. We've got a 30+ year history of owning and operating cellular operating companies in the United States and abroad. And what that means is we can bring to private LTE networks all of that operating experience of cellular technologies. So, we want to be, the core network and the operating partner for as many private LTE systems, as we can. And sometimes we are providing an end-to-end solution, and we would be hiring in the installation type work. We don't do that ourselves. And sometimes we're working side by side with the system integration type company to do that. And we're absolutely fine with both models, right? We want to emphasize what's our core capability and differentiation. And another thing I would mention there, Rich, is part of that cellular operating history is the relationships that we have with the other mobile operators in the ecosystem. And so we have bilateral roaming agreements with those carriers, that we can bring to bear to help these private networks be what we like to call an interconnected private LTE network. Right. And that's one of the distinctive features of using Geoverse as the back end for any private LTE network, is that it can become interconnected. I'd say also in the stack of companies, right, then you also need the device OEMs that are an important factor, and we're really pleased with the development of the ecosystem of devices. And sometimes we provide the devices. Again, from our cellular operating background, we've got core competencies in forward and reverse logistics. We have distribution center. We can stock product. We can get them to the customer a simple way. Or if the enterprise has existing supply relationships for computers or modems or things they use, then we're comfortable with that too. And the last thing I would mention is applications, that you need them to have the applications to ride on this network. And push to talk is an important one. We're going to be, I think, announcing some new news on that coming up in terms of working with a company for push to talk kind of service. The video surveillance we talked about. We've got relationships with companies that do the computer vision type algorithms. Payment solutions, right? We can provide a payment application if our customers don't already have something that they're using. So those are the kind of the complete stack is, the device OEMs, the integration partners, Geoverse, kind of the glue that brings that all together, and is the operating partner, and then the applications on top. And I think the key to our operating philosophy is to be flexible, right? We can bundle all those things in if that's best for the customer. We can work side by side with all those other companies if that's best for the customer.
Right. So it always has seemed to me that the benefit of Geoverse was its interconnection piece, the opportunity that you had to connect me with the outside world, because I could put that private network in my building, but that interconnection piece seemed to be the crown jewel of what you bring to the table. Is that a good, kind of encapsulation of it?
Absolutely, Rich. Yeah, I think that's the one of the key differentiating features of the Geoverse offer. and what brings us into the conversation in most of the opportunities that we're working on. So that interconnected private LTE is what we feature, right? And so your devices aren't left on an island. If they need to move out to another place, we can support that. A related feature to that, Rich, that I would mention is that, our solution is very good for enterprises that have multiple locations, because all of them are interconnected. Right? So if you have a Geoverse powered network in your main headquarters, and you also put that in your manufacturing facility, right, as people would move between those locations, they're always going to be on their private network and securely accessing their corporate information.
Right. You mentioned the Manhattan opportunity that you were working on, but are there other case studies that you can talk through? What's happened, what are the benefits, how it worked out for a client or two?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about hospitality. And there we've got, a casino customer in Washington State that is, using the private LTE network. The first two use cases are for their housekeeping staff in the hotel part of the operation, so that they're able to provide workflow direction to those staff, as well as give them an emergency communications means if something should happen. And the second use case is with their shuttle van drivers, right? So they've got communications, and this is a case where that interconnectedness is vital, right? Because the whole idea is you're going off the property to pick someone up and bring them back, and you need to have that interconnectedness, but yet be part of the same community of the workforce there.
Gee, that seems like a no-brainer. And to have push to talk even on top of that, as you mentioned a little bit a while ago, seems like that would be a terrific thing. So talk us through a little bit of the device cycle for if I wanted to put it into my building. What's the device cycle like for the residents of the building? How will they be getting CBRS and private LTE frequencies into their phones? And what do you think the cycle is for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two sides of that, right? If we're talking about company-provided devices, then that cycle can go quite quickly, right? It's really governed by the rate at which the enterprise wants to invest in new equipment. In this casino example I mentioned, right, we provide those devices as part of our bundled offer. And this is a new operation for them largely, and so they're equipping the people right from the get-go with devices that we've provided. In other cases, that there would be more of a gradual turnover cycle, right? If you're gradually reducing your reliance on a land mobile radio system for walkie-talkies and moving that push-to-talk over to LTE on CBRS, they may not retire that system in one shot, but as the replacement cycle for those devices goes, on the neutral host side, where we're talking about individual consumers with their individual or family plans with all the tier 1 carriers, then that replacement cycle is going to go with sort of the industry rhythms. Fortunately, all of the major OEMs, particularly Apple and Samsung in this country, have built CBRS support into their main products. And with the 5G coming and that driving what everyone expects to be kind of a pickup in the replacement cycle for handsets, we think the CBRS support is going to come quite quickly. Gotcha. Across an important part of the consumer subscriber base that exists out there. So I think in a year or two, this is going to be very common in both just, sort of the natural replacement cycle on the consumer side, and then for enterprise, it'll be a mix of where they're very intentionally pushing out new devices, maybe as part of the bundle that we've provided, and sometimes more gradually, turning over their company provided devices.
Right. So I've had a real question in my mind for a while on how this private LTE and CBRS, these systems, relate to 5G. So you just mentioned it, and I'm still scratching my head about how that private network, those private networks and CBRS relate to 5G. Can you clear that up for me and explain how a landlord could kind of get a twofer, if you will, putting in a private LTE network and being able to get 5G as part of that situation?
Yeah, that's a good, very good point, Rich. And the CBRS Alliance recently released their 3.0 specifications that incorporates support for 5G. So the standards are all done. The chipsets within the devices are preparing for this because the CBRS spectrum is right in the middle of what 5G means around the world, right? In Asia and in Europe, this 3.5 gigahertz frequency band is right in the heart of the spectrum for 5G. And so the chipsets in the devices are prepared for it. Several of the OEMs of the equipment side that we're working with have upgrade paths for taking the current equipment to 5G so that the incremental investment can be moderate. It's not a rip and replace to go to 5G. So I also think that with these higher frequencies for 5G, the normal sort of public cellular build-outs are going to have a tough time reaching into buildings, especially with these super high speeds that people are going to want with 5G. So, we think that 5G is going to be another really strong driver for, why landlords and really every type of real estate owner needs to invest in, this kind of technology today, because it provides a great service today and it's a platform for 5G. And I really believe that if you have a premier property that you're trying to lease in a 5G world and your 5G service, you can't walk in and get great 5G service, that's going to be a huge disadvantage. And so, I think that, real estate owners really have an opportunity here to, grab the moment, and if they can invest now in a fantastic LTE service that can grow into a 5G service, easily over the next couple of years.
And can you help me with the big question as part of this, which is how would a 3.5, 3.7 system work with a millimeter wave 5G player like Verizon? How would that work? Maybe that's a little technical for this situation, but that one I'm not clear of how they would solve that issue where their system is a millimeter wave system, yet the 5G network that's in the building is going to be at, in the 2.5 to 3.5 range.
Yeah, I mean, the way that gets stitched together is through the handset, right? So the handsets that support millimeter wave will also support the 3.5, and they'll also support the low band spectrum. So I think all the operators are thinking of this layer cake strategy, where you've got your old original cellular spectrum, or your 600 or 700 megahertz spectrum, where you get this really big coverage for 5G, but maybe not so much of a bandwidth lift. Then you have your mid-band spectrum like 3.5, where you get a really significant bandwidth lift and good coverage. And then you have your millimeter wave, where you have maybe the tightest coverage per cell, but this is super high speed capability. And so, we see ourselves as the middle layer in that cake, where we're supporting, 5G at 3.5, delivering a fantastic broadband experience with a good range and a good cost structure to use inside of buildings.
Gotcha. So, I guess the issue is, how can commercial real estate, residential real estate, industrial real estate, how can hospitality companies get more information about this private LTE CBRS situation, how they get 5G using that? I'm pleased to announce today, and this is the first time we're talking about it, that the CBRS Alliance, the OnGo CBRS Alliance, is going to be participating with us in our the Connected Virtual Tech event in
Okay.
July, and they've agreed to be a part of that. And they seem to be, interested in making sure the information gets out. But how would you recommend that real estate owners of all shapes and sizes get more information about this technology?
Well, firstly, I hope they have your website and your publications and your conference events bookmarked, and that they, they're staying close to that, because you're really keep a great touch on what's happening in the industry and what real estate owners need to know.
Thank
So
you.
that's one thing I would shout back at you for that. Obviously, then we'd be anxious to get in touch with anyone that can reach us through our website, and we can get involved and explain the benefits of private LTE, our interconnected private LTE. We also want to promote our partners, and so they can work through companies like CTS who are really knowledgeable about this as well. And that's another pathway. So when we're going to be building more of those, right, we want to have as many pathways to the customer as possible. Because our vision is that at some point in time, not far from now, an in-building wireless network is going to be not a question of if, but from who, right? There was a time, I think, that maybe people wondered about whether they really needed to install telephone wiring in the building. Maybe that's not what everybody's going to need. Pretty soon that became, well, you don't have a building if you don't have telephone wiring in the building. We think cellular wireless is the same thing. And, so our strategy is to, work with a lot of different partners to be very partner friendly, and, to be everywhere that people might want to turn to for their wireless when it becomes just a de facto part of any building.
Right. What is the website address if they want to find Geoverse, Rod?
It's real easy, geoverse.io.
Geoverse.io. Good.
Yeah.
And so, I take this very seriously in terms of we see you at Geoverse as one of the most enlightened companies in this field. And I think anyone in the real estate aspect of this, whatever the vertical, whether it's hospitals or hospitality, should contact you if they want help with this topic, or at least to understand this topic. I think, if I were a real estate owner today, I'd be making sure my teams were exploring everything possible for the future, and reaching out to geoverse.io, I think, would be a great way to start. Anything else you'd like to add at sort of to encapsulate all this as we finish up? Is there anything that we didn't cover that you think people should know?
No, that's been a really good conversation, Rich. I think that, as we're coming out of a period here where we've been in something of a lockdown, right? We're seeing our projects, some that were on hold are restarting, and we're really excited about that. And we think that, as things may be a bit more competitive in the near future, when, where there might have been very low vacancy rates, and maybe that's going to tick up, and we don't know how that's all going to change. Or for some of our hospitality, clients, they're going to need to deliver, a really great experience to draw people back. And, we think the time is really now to invest in the private LTE system to prepare your real estate to be the very best it can.
Right. So an A building used to have a marble lobby, fast elevators, and a good security system at the desk. Today, it's what do you have from a connectivity standpoint in your building that makes you a Class A building more so than just a fancy lobby. We've been talking today with Rod Nelson, the CEO of Geoverse. That's geoverse.io, not geoverse.com. And Rod, thank you so much for your time. It was very informative. We will stay on top of the private LTE CBRS trend here, and look forward to seeing you again soon in the flesh.
All right. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.